Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network, where me and Dallas King make our way through the A24 filmography and TV work, and in between we try to bring you interviews with the talent involved. In this episode, I'm joined by Bayne Gibby to discuss her starring role in Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird as an abstinent teacher, Casey Kelly, who comes into conflict with Lady Bird. Bayne discusses with me her career in TV and film, her casting in Lady Bird, and what it's like to work on the set of a Greta Gerwig film, and much, much more in our interview. Thanks so much to Bayne for joining me, and I hope you too will enjoy the show.
And at 15, this girl was pregnant. She decided that she was going to get an abortion. It made sense. It was the right thing to do. She was sitting there, waiting
she
for the
didn't
doctor
get
to
it.
come in, and something deep inside of her said, no.
Bingo.
Anyone want to guess who this woman is? The young lady right here.
You?
No, it was not me.
Your friend?
No. The girl in the story was my mother. I am that baby that she decided not to abort. That could have been me. That could have been my fate.
Just because something looks ugly doesn't mean it's morally wrong.
What did you say, ma'am?
Nothing.
Please, share.
I said, just because something looks ugly doesn't mean that it's morally wrong.
You think dead children aren't morally wrong?
No, I'm just saying that if you took up-close pictures of my vagina while I was on my period, it would be disturbing, but it doesn't make it wrong.
Excuse me?
Listen, if your mother had had the abortion, we wouldn't have to sit through this stupid assembly.
Bayne, welcome to the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
You're a diverse creative talent. You're an author, a writer, actor, and performer. Was that always your hope to become a potentially jack-of-all-trades creative?
Yes, I was interested in all of those things growing up. I was kind of a early theater kid, if you will. I realized really young that I loved doing it. When I was, I don't know, I think I did my first sort of community local play when I was like 3 or 4, and my costume was, this gives you a sense of how small I was. My costume was a pillowcase, which was a dress. So I was small enough to wear a pillowcase as a dress, and my mom just cut a hole in the top and 2 holes as the sleeves.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it reached like my ankles. And as soon as I sort of started doing that and realized how much I loved it, I was kind of really laser focused on that track. And, you know, my parents kept kind of trying to get me to diversify, bless them, like, well, maybe you don't want to get focused this early, but it was like, it was already done. And then kind of, I would say in middle school or high school, kind of realized that I really liked writing as well. And maybe that could all kind of be a part of it. And when I moved to New York after college, and I sort of would tell people, well, I really want to write children's books and I'm an actor. And I, you know, they were like, well, maybe you kind of need to pick one lane, do that for a while. And then you can kind of get to the other things later. And funnily enough, that's sort of what ended up happening. So I focused primarily on acting. And then when I had a little bit of stability and momentum going there, I was able to sort of create space in my brain and my life to try to branch out and really focus on getting the children's book stuff going and get some writing going. Because as you know, there's only so many hours in the day, and you're also trying to make a living, you know, when you're just out of school and you have to have sort of a job to pay the rent. So there's so much, you know, to try to get done, but I still feel like I have 5 balls in the air at any given time, because I think it's good to have multiple creative things going so you don't get obsessed about any one thing.
What were some of like the early films, shows, and talent that sort of inspired you on your journey?
Well, the first really visceral experience that I remember on stage I was very young. I was about 3 or 4, and it was probably right around the time of the whatever that pillowcase play was. There was a local talent show, and I think I was 3, and I told my parents that I wanted to go in it, which they thought was kind of strange, but they encouraged it, and we were trying to sort of figure out what I would do. And I decided, because it was one of the few things I knew all the words to, that I would sing the Oscar Mayer Wiener commercial jingle.
Very nice.
And I would try to replicate the scene in the commercial where there's I think it's a little boy in the commercial, but it's raining, and he's wearing like one of those classic yellow raincoats and hats, and he's fishing, and he's got the fishing pole, and I don't know why he's fishing in the rain, but he sings, my baloney has a first name, it's OSCAR, so he sings like the song about the Oscar Wiener hot dog. And so I decided, that was going to be my act. And so I got on stage in front of all these, it was multi-generational audience, kids, adults, but I remember it being a very full picture, like a multi-purpose room, a community center kind of thing, packed to the gills, and kind of coming out, like it was almost like a scene from a movie where, like, the lights hit you and you're kind of like disoriented, and you kind of have one of those, whoa, like, why did I do this? and then you start in, and it was like dead silent. And then when I got to the end of the song, because Oscar Mayer has a way of BOLOGNA, it was like this, it was like an eruption of yelling and clapping. I think simply because it was, to see a little kid do that was just really funny. And it was so loud that I thought it was like a violent reaction. So I started crying. I burst into tears, and then that made everybody laugh, so it was like this rolling energy. And even though I kind of was confused and I didn't really know what was going on, it was like I got bitten by the bug at that moment of like, oh, that's really powerful. Like, that was a really, really intense and powerful. And I think my parents thought I was traumatized, but I was like, when can I do that again?
Amazing. Has it been a challenge to turn that passion into a career, and what's been your journey to doing so? Ultimately, as you say, you're an author, you're an actor, you're kind of juggling quite a few different careers in a way.
I think the hardest part of the beginning, and I thought it would change, but it doesn't, it just continues, is that you feel like you're continually pushing. You feel like you're continually in an aspirational phase, or I still do. Even though I hit certain accomplishments and certain benchmarks, it still feels like there's an extreme push every day to try to open new doors and get people to acknowledge you and give you a chance and let you come into the room and show them what you can do. I think that when we're younger, we have this fantasy that, you work really hard, and then at a certain point, and someone like opens the door and is like, come on in, it gets easier from here. Sit down, the couches are very comfortable. And that just sort of might happen for a day or two, but really it's like once you finish that particular project or that role, it's sort of back to trying to get another job and proving that you're worthy. And that takes a certain resilience. And I think that only comes from truly, I don't want to say obsession like it's a bad thing, but truly loving the work and not getting completely exhausted by the process, because it is not for everybody. Yeah. Because I'll have certain people say to me, wow, it's like you get jobs, but then your job is almost, trying to get the next job, because you're kind of like a gypsy that goes from thing to thing. And so that definitely is exhausting, and not for somebody who really wants a huge amount of stability, because you don't really truly get that when you're a creative person.
For those whose kind of first encounter with your work was Lady Bird, they might have had a similar reaction to me and gone, I think I recognize her from so many other different things. What have been some of the highlights of your career so far? I mean, you've been in a range of film, TV, shows, shorts, and in so many different types of roles, from things like Mad Men, Parks and Rec, The Comeback, and Curb. And I'm going to show you this. This is wasted on listeners, but I have a Latte Larry mug.
Yes.
We're Carol in the Curb Your Enthusiasm finale. So what have been some of the highlights of your career so far that you'd recommend people check out?
Well, the very first job I had, so it was really a big deal and really memorable, was as a guest star on Sex and the City in its final season. And that was really big for me because I was living in New York and I was an aspiring actor, and I'd done a lot of things on the stage and in off Broadway spaces, sketch, improv, stand up, all that stuff. But no TV, no film. And it sort of seemed like this, this abyss. Like I had to climb this mountain, and I was sort of, I had spent a few years in New York, and I just couldn't quite seem to get anyone to open a door for me. And I ended up booking this one-day job on Sex and the City. And it was, when you lived in New York City and the show was on at the time, it was so massive. The fandom was massive. And so the day that I did that one, it felt like I was sort of in a dream, because I went to the studio to do the read through, and it's like the cast of Sex and the City. And then Baryshnikov was in those episodes because he was Carrie's love interest. And I was a big, ballet kid. And so I was like sort of obsessed with Baryshnikov when I was a young girl. And I had seen all of his like tapes from when he was a young dancer. And so just the fact that he was kind of like sitting right here and kind of yucking it up, like that whole experience was like, I was Alice, through the looking glass. So that was the first, that was big. And then my whole experience on The Comeback, getting to play Gigi, was sort of similarly surreal, because I was flown like very last minute from New York to LA. It was kind of this whirlwind, like we need to get you there in 2 days. All of a sudden, kind of like I'm on the set acting with Lisa Kudrow. And the thing that was wild about that was when I was just out of college and I was doing this really sort of like Ricky Gervais comes to mind when I think of this, because it was like one of those acting jobs you almost don't want to admit you had because it's embarrassing. But I was in this like minivan tour around New Jersey where we went to schools and we did like classic folk tales, and we had to wear these sweatsuits. I mean, the costume was horrible, and like the whole thing was really kind of hilariously low budget. But somebody reminded me that when I was doing that job, we had been playing this game in the minivan, and someone asked me like, who would be your dream, person to get to do a show with? And I had said Lisa Kudrow, and that was 10 years before it actually happened. So that was like, those moments are really special. So The Comeback, I mean, Lady Bird was a big deal because I was a huge Greta Gerwig fan, and I had done a lot of TV, but I had never been in a movie. And I auditioned for her, and she was in the room. And I remember I had flown back I was on the East Coast visiting my family. It was during the summertime. And I was sitting in the Newark airport, and my agents called me and said, you have this audition tomorrow. If you can get it together, we don't even know you're coming back late tonight, but if you can get it together, it was like at 11 the next morning or something. And if you think you're going to be too jet lagged, you can go in like later in the week, but Greta Gerwig won't be there. I was like, oh no, I'm going to go in tomorrow. I'll get it. I'll figure it out. And so I I was like rushed back, dropped the bags. Like, I think I had probably like had to like, dye my hair real quick. Cause I'd been sort of in this cabin in the woods for like 3.5 weeks. I was all unkempt and, looking wild, feral. And when I met her and we did the scene, I think the scene was pretty similar to exactly the way that it appeared in the movie. And I told her a story about, because I went to an all-girls high school, and I told her a story about, my school wasn't Catholic, but I told her a story about when we had the equivalent, which was a sex education lady. So it wasn't an abstinence speaker, but it was someone like telling you, all the ways to be safe. And that she had put a condom on a banana, and like literally an auditorium full of 500 like high schoolers like burst into like such raucous laughter that she completely lost control of the room and like couldn't regain it back. And like the looks on her face, because I think there's this very special humiliation that comes when you are an adult and a bunch of children or teenagers are laughing at you. And I think that's why I got the part, because I told her like what some of the things that were said, and that like, this woman just looked like she wanted to die. Like she wanted the floor to like eat her up. And I think that's why I think Greta was like, oh, she gets it. And then, in the final edit, you see, they give me this really nice shot at the end of the scene where my face is just like, I want to die.
Absolutely. I mean, what was your reaction to sort of the script and the character? As you were saying, sort of you're a Greta Gerwig fan. I mean, right behind me, I've got like
yes,
Francis Ha poster. So solidarity on that front with you. What was your reaction to sort of the script? Did you just have your scene, or did you have access to the full script?
I had the full script. Of course, I read my scene first, and then as I was on the plane, I read the whole thing, and I remember I was like, it was like chuckling. I had my laptop out, and the person next to me is like, I'm reading through, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much of this that's so relatable. And even if it wasn't your exact high school experience, there's so many feelings in it and moments that are so relatable and universal and heartbreaking. There's so many things in high school that on a daily basis, the stakes are so high and you have so many emotions throughout the entire day. Your day can start off one way and go in 5 million different directions. And I think that's something that as an adult, because you change and you get older and things don't feel so high stakes, you forget what that feels like. And when you talk to somebody who is in high school and they're like, well, first this person said this, and then this person, and Mrs. So-and-so said this, and I got this grade, and you're like, wow, this is a lot. But we were all like that at one time, where it felt like the end of the world. And I think that was very beautifully captured in that script, and that Greta really has a sense for making that not into a joke. None of the moments were kind of made fun of. You never were poking fun at Lady Bird's experience, but rather it gave you a second where you could like re-enter that phase of your life and remember that kind of rawness that we all had.
When you get that phone call that you've booked the role, how long do you have between the booking and turning up on set? And what do you do in that time to sort of prepare for the role? Are you someone that, researching potentially these, even though you've got the experience, looking at some of these videos of these kind of pro-life abstinence kind of talks, Pinterest boards? What's your preparation time in between?
Well, I remember that. So in TV, things happen very quickly. It's usually you go in and maybe you find out the next day or the next night, or maximum a day or a couple days later. It moves pretty quickly, but in film, there's more time. So I remember, I think I went in and I remember thinking it went really well. But I think maybe 2 weeks had gone by, and then I sort of got a call saying, which is like this is a certain kind of purgatory for an actor. It was like, it's looking really good. Like, you're the first choice, but they're not making an offer yet, but they want you to know like you're in the mix basically and they're like, okay, so I have to just sit in this for a minute knowing I'm very close. I may get it, I may not. And that's something that over the years I've had experiences like this. You learn sort of these mind tricks where you're just like, oh, I'm going to practice some sort of lucid denial where I'm going to kind of put this in a little box in my brain and put it to the side. And I remember that went on for like another maybe couple weeks. But I just had a good feeling about it. I just thought, well, in the end, I do think that I'm going to get it. And even if I don't get this one, I feel like I will work with Greta at some point, because I feel like we did have a connection, and she liked what I was doing. And so I just had a good feeling. And then it was pretty quick once I found out, it was maybe a week, where then all of a sudden you start hearing from people about a costume fitting. And what was funny about that was they said, oh, we don't need to have a costume fitting. Just wear exactly what you wore to the audition, which was funny because I had this dress that I wear on the movie that was from 2000-ish. The movie's in 2002, but I was like, well, this is the exact right like cut of the moment. These like sheath dresses, because I was a preschool teacher at that time, around 2001, 2002. And I used to wear that dress when I was teaching, just because it was like loose and comfortable. And I had put a pink cardigan over it. So they said, yeah, exactly what you wore to the audition. Just like bring that on the day. It was, which I've never had. That was like so easy. It was like done. There's no need to look at anything. And then we shot in Pasadena at a functioning high school. So by this time we're into September. So I think the audition was like the very end of July. And then the shoot, we're into the school year, very beginning of the school year. And it was a functioning high school. So there were kids, we were in the gymnasium, and there were kids, the bell would ring, and then you would just hear like this massive rush of kids going down the hall and like this massive noise, and we would have to just like hold until they went into the next period. And so that was really fun, because it wasn't like, oh, we're on this set, that's supposed to feel like a high school. It was like, it had all the smells and like the squeak of that gymnasium floor, and the banners, that like all the banners that you have up, and like all those choking hazard signs and everything. Like it was all very, real. And I just remember it being a really fantastic day that I did not want to end, because Greta's, obviously she started as an actor. And I think that the best directors are people who are actors first. And she does this thing where everybody on the set wears a name tag.
Oh, yes.
Which is very cool, because for years I have been saying, it's a certain kind of torture when you're the new person, or you're going to be there for a day on a film or a TV set. Oftentimes it's, if you're the guest, you're just there for a day. And you don't know who is who. You can see the names beforehand on the call list, but when you get there and all of a sudden there's like a bunch of people talking to you and pushing you, okay, you're going to go over here and get mic'd, and then you're going to go see Sam for this, and then Jill's over here, and you're like, who? And I've been saying for years, I just wish people would wear a name tag that had their name and their position, so that you didn't have to pretend like you knew what was happening all the time. Yeah. And so she had one. Everybody who was not on camera had one. And she was like, yeah, I mean, we want everybody to know each other's names and to know where to go. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not something you would know unless you had been in the position where you're trying. I mean, there's so many times where I was I've tried to pretend I knew who I was supposed to go see and what, so, I mean, and that's the least of it. She just had a very, sort of very easy rapport with the actors. There's oftentimes on sets, there's a real high level of stress. You're racing with the clock, or you're racing with the light, or certain elements. We have to be out of here at this time, and we have to get this, and there's like this breakneck pace. She sort of made it feel very relaxed and like, okay, now we're going to do it this way, and now we're going to do it this way. And there were several different endings that we shot for that scene. She let us sort of do a couple alternate endings. One was where Saoirse's Lady Bird and I got into a really big kind of shouting match back and forth. And then the principal says, like, I think it's best if you go, and I just leave. There were all these sort of different, which was so fun and so unexpected that we would get to do those different things and improv, and that she trusted us to do that. And then, of course, I think they picked the best option in the movie, which is that Lady Bird's status at the end of it is way higher than mine, because she puts me in my place and humiliates me. But it was just one of those delightful experiences that I wish I could have been there for a month and sort of gotten to work with her even longer.
Was it just a day all in all that you were on the set then?
It was a day. It was a long day, maybe about 13 hours. But they were shooting our scenes, and there's a deleted scene. It might be in the extras, but there was a scene that we shot where, I wasn't in it, but we shot it the same, in that block, all the gymnasium scenes together. So it was a scene where Lady Bird was running for president, and in her speech, she does a rap, and it didn't end up getting in the final film, but they did that, and they did the sex education scene. And then as soon as we were wrapped, they were making a mad dash to dress the gymnasium in that country and Western themed dance. So I was leaving, and as I was saying goodbye to Saoirse, she was like in her cowgirl outfit, and they were about to film that whole piece. So that was a long day for them. But yeah, it was like a long 13-hour experience. And I just remember on the way home, and you feel this way about the best jobs, the very best jobs. You drive home and you're like, oh man, I didn't want that to end,
Was it a challenge to put yourself in the mindset of a character like that? Or is that just become part of the job sort of to do that?
I mean, it's really ironic because I have a friend who always jokes that she's like, how did you end up getting into this little niche where you're a church lady and people want to put you in this cardigan? Because I played sort of a church going lady in the show Enlightened. And I think that's where it started, just somebody very rigid and conservative. And I remember when I auditioned for that thinking, this is so not me. I don't know if I can, sort of pull this off. And then it's funny because once I got kind of 2 seasons of that under my belt, I think that's, for some people, they thought like, oh, that's who she is, and she plays that person because she is that. And then they would be very surprised when they met me and I was sort of the total opposite of that. And so it's just funny because it's like it kind of all happened by accident, but I am very much the opposite of a judgy church lady. So I had kind of gotten comfortable in that like that role. But the fear, I think, what's fun about playing characters like that is they're afraid of everything and they're afraid of everybody. And, I think we all know people like this in real life who call everybody weird. Oh, that person is weird and that's weird. And they're just strange. And and I think that in real life, I'm one of the weird people, so I've been on the other side of someone going, yeah, you make weird jokes. And like, yeah, I don't understand why you do that. And so it's easier for me to understand the person on the other side who's judging. So it's kind of like a fun little reversal.
One of the things I was curious about, the way it was kind of shot. So you've got this like huge cast of kids, and and there you are, quite solitary in the middle of this gym hall with this baying audience almost. And it's a real mixture of these sorts of medium shots of them interacting and responding to you and posing questions, and obviously then close-ups of Ladybird kind of responding negatively to your message. How did that sort of work on the day? Were you kind of, would you sort of shoot your stuff and could you hear what they were sort of saying, these kind of characters, or would it be sort of a close-up on you, there's someone, you know, a Saoirse Ronan or whatever, maybe like a meter away behind the camera as opposed to in the crowd saying, making it clear what she's kind of saying? How did it all kind of fit together?
That's a really smart question because it was very intentionally done. And this is another testament to Greta, who being very smart about things. So it started off with me standing in front of the bleachers, and on the bleachers was just a handful of the students. So it was Saoirse, it was Beanie Feldstein, and maybe 3 or 4 other kids. And they did the wide of me, so getting me against the wall, getting my face and the wide shot of me, so you don't see the kids at all. So they're just giving me a little smattering of reaction and the dialogue with Saoirse back and forth. Then they did a close-up, maybe a medium of me and then a close-up. But as we were doing the medium of me and the close-up, they scattered time-wise. It would be like 10 more kids would come in and fill the bleachers, and then like 10 more kids would come in who had like scattered call times. And so by the time they turned it around and they did like an over the shoulder of me, it was like filled, which was really smart. So they didn't make like those kids sit there the whole time. And so then by the time we were getting like their shots, it was just like this wall of kids who were all, there was just like I said, there was just a certain very raw vulnerability that comes from you talking and seeing kids who are just like they are asleep, they don't want to be there, they're rolling their eyes at you, so by the end, when it was just this full bleacher and they were like laughing at me, and maybe there was another coverage like from the side where, so it was like we got the whole thing in. By that time I was, I had done it maybe 20, 30 times over and over and over again. And so by that point, you're just like, really, it's like seamless. And it really did feel like, I was in the horrible position of having to talk to all these girls.
Did you get like PTSD back to your school days of being sort of like, as you're saying, like, I think it was like substitute teacher or something? Did you get
totally
those moments?
Totally. Here's the thing though. It's like at my school, we never would have gotten away with talking to an adult like that. But it was, like, I think that's what's so iconic about Lady Bird is like, she says and does things that maybe like just right, even from the beginning where she's like fighting with her mom and then she just jumps out of the car. It's like, you're down for the ride of like, God, I wanted to do that when I was in high school. But instead I just like rolled my eyes and went like, Mom, it's like Lady Bird always took everything the step extra that the audience wanted to do when they were a kid. I know that's sort of how I saw it.
What was it like sort of working with Saoirse Ronan? What was she like as a scene partner on that kind of scene?
She was so lovely. First of all, we had a bit of downtime in between the setups at the beginning where, on other shows that I've done, oftentimes the star is sort of whisked away and they, every moment that there's a down time, they'll go to a trailer or to a room and isolate. Saoirse is truly a very down-to-earth person. So she sort of sat down with me and was like, yeah, what's your story? tell me about yourself, which was shocking because you don't, usually that doesn't happen. And so at the time I was teaching some college acting classes and having a really rough time of it because the students just did not want to be there. And I was kind of pulling teeth and trying to get them interested, which was the exact opposite of what I thought. I had pictured this experience where, you know, I was going to like touch the lives of young performers and they were going to remember me forever. And I thought it was going to be this amazing feeding my spiritual creator. It was the total opposite of that. And so I was telling her funny stories about that. And she was, you know, genuinely engaged. And she said, you know, I said, yeah, this is my first movie. And she was like, really? Oh my gosh. And, you know, I think she was telling me about like what her first movie was when she was basically a child. And she was saying, gosh, you've really done a lot of things, you know, on your way to getting here. And I remember saying, yeah, I mean, it wasn't by choice. I wanted to be here the whole time. You know, I wanted to be here as a child and sort of do like what you did. But it takes some of us, you know, until we've been doing it decades before we land here. And I remember her really like hearing that, you know, and being like, that's so cool. And because I was like, well, I've been a preschool teacher, I've taught college, I worked in an office, I scooped ice cream, you know, but through all of those things, I always wanted to be doing this. It wasn't like I found it late in life. It was that I got the door opened later. And so it took me longer to get here. And I just can't say enough what a genuinely kind person she was. And so when we were doing the back and forth and Greta said, you know, now improvise a little, it was just seamless. And we just had so much fun. And it was really a highlight. It was really such a career highlight.
One of those, that little back and forth, I must admit, if anyone ever searched through my social media, I think that's one of my most used gifs is her. Listen, bingo, it's my go-to one. Like whenever like I feel like I need to dismiss something or roll my eyes, I always think of that little back and forth.
Bingo. Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, and it's really fun to be a gif. I will say, like, people will send them to me and I'll be like, oh my God, I never saw this.
When did you sort of see the film for the first time and what was your reaction? Because I'm shocked that it's been 3 years now since the film was released in America. I only remember that because I'm in the middle of, like you, lockdown, and my Instagram feels the need to tell me every day, years ago you were in Chicago.
You were doing this.
You were in Washington, D.C. on like a thing. And one of my things was like, I was so excited to be in Chicago, meet some friends for the first time, do these things. I was like, shit, I might get to see Lady Bird. It was one of the most anticipated films. I was like, right, we'll get there on the Friday. Let's a bunch of us go to the cinema, get a deep dish pizza, go see Lady Bird.
Oh,
it was a great way to see that film. What was your first time and what was your reaction? Did you have any nerves? You were maybe not...
Oh my gosh. I was so nervous. Well, first of all, when it started going through the festival route, and it was at Telluride first, I think, and then Sundance and South by Southwest, and you start seeing the reviews come in and they're really positive. My first thought was, am I still in the movie? Because as an actor, you're always thinking, well, something could have happened and they could cut that scene. It's always a possibility and you have to be ready for it, because there's been many times where I've sat down. I was cut on Parks and Rec a couple times before I ended up getting on it. And it's always the worst when you tell people you're going to be on the show and you yourself sit down, you know, you fix yourself a nice snack and you're like, I'm going to watch this. And then you're like, this is where my scene is going to come. And you're like, and it's not there. You know, it's awful. So first, when it started in the festivals, I was sort of trying to get a hold of somebody who'd seen it and say, like, am I in it? And is my scene like this big, or is it like, you know, and I kind of got word. Yeah, it's in there. It's in there. You're in there. So, okay, phew. And then there was no premiere. I was hoping there would be kind of a fun premiere I could go to, but they ended up doing, the premiere in Greta's hometown where it was actually shot. So no premiere, no party. That's okay. So it's coming out on a Friday. My friend Sarah said, why don't we go and catch like a midnight show on Thursday night? I was like, yeah, let's do that. So, I mean, I was so nervous. And I even was like, kind of telling her because as soon as my scene came up, she like pulled out her phone and was like trying to take pictures. I was like, stop, just watch, It's like, because my fear was after all this anticipation, it was going to be cut down to just like a little morsel, and I was going to be disappointed. That's like the biggest fear, that you're going to have this expectation that it's not going to meet. And so I was, as that scene is like an hour into the movie. So I was very tense for the first hour, and enjoyed it much more when I watched it the second time shortly after. I think it was like a few weeks later, I went back and saw it again. But what was super exciting was that my name comes up at the beginning, and, so it was right around Thanksgiving that movie came out. And it was really cool because I got tons of messages from people who were like, oh my gosh, my family went to go see this over Thanksgiving, and we saw your name came up, and then we couldn't wait to see like where you were going to pop up. And it just was a nice way to connect with people and have a reminder that there are a lot of people who are rooting for you, and were happy for me that I had made the leap up onto the big screen.
If you're ever wanting to find out more information about your title font, we interviewed a guy, Teddy Blanks, a couple of weeks ago. He is involved in like font and title design, and he did like Lady Bird, and like he spoke with us all about like how they settled on the certain font for the actors and all the kind of the creative process for that. He's got a really stunning portfolio online about sort of what went into that process to get your name up in those opening credits.
I mean, it's amazing when you really break it down how many people are involved, and the stuff that, as an average viewer, I mean, you and I think about these things, but the average viewer is not thinking about the font and the aesthetic. They just know that, oh, I really liked the way that looked visually. But, all of the people that go into creating the aesthetic, it's very cool. It's such an ensemble effort.
When you worked on the film, like, as you said, this is your first film. Did you anticipate when you were watching it, that midnight release, that it would go on to be nominated for multiple Academy Awards, become this multi-award winning kind of film, critically acclaimed? Did you see that unfolding?
I mean, you always hope, but you also, there's been so many times where I thought something was going to be big and it ends up just being like a whisper in the wind, and vice versa. So I had a feeling Lady Bird, once I saw it, would be significant. But it's funny because then you always have, the opposition where, there, like, it was getting nominated and people were talking about how much they loved it, and it was getting all these great critical acclaims. And then I'm not really on Facebook anymore, but I at the time I would go on Facebook and I would see like these threads of people that like I sort of knew, Facebook friends that were kind of acquaintances, who were like, does anyone understand why people like Lady Bird? That movie sucked, And so I remember there was one like that. It said something like that. It sucked. And all of my friends are so much more talented than that ensemble of actors, something like that.
I'm going to need names, by the way, because I need to go sort of like get them blocked from Facebook. They must be Russian trolls. It must be a disinformation campaign.
Well, this was like a friend of a friend. And so I wrote something like, I really liked it. And I thought the woman who played the abstinence speaker was unexpectedly sexy. Right. And so then, but they still didn't make the connection that it was me. And they were like, no, it was boring and something, whatever. And I said, well, please don't rain on my parade. I'm in it and it's a really big deal. And I play the abstinence speaker, and like, cheers you know, if you have friends that are that talented, I can't wait to see the movie you guys make or something like that. And instead of being like, oh, I'm sorry, I kind of lifted up my leg and peed on you. She was like, well, I stand by my comment anyway. And I was like, okay, cool. You do you, man. You know, so it's like, there's always going to be people who want to tell you why they don't like the thing that you did that's super successful. But I've come to understand that that's kind of a human nature thing. It's like they want to be contrary when everybody's saying something's amazing. I remember the day I was on Mad Men, again, one long amazing day, and I was talking to Christina Hendricks, and she was saying how she had a certain friend who was like, you know, Mad Men was winning Emmys and Golden Globes and like tearing up the world. And she had this one friend that was like, yeah, I don't know, Christina, I just don't get it. I don't think it's good. And I think, you know, like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but just like, I don't think it's good. And I was like, and he really thought that his opinion was so important and weighty that he needed to, you know, sort of drop that turd in the punch bowl for you. There's always going to be people who do that.
If it makes I'll give you a little behind the scenes of our podcast. Our Lady Bird movie review episode is our most popular download episode.
Oh, good.
So it kind of resonates when they like scroll down. It's like, yeah, that one interesting. Where's the Lady Bird episode?
Good. Yeah.
Those are the stats that we live and breathe by. When did you realize like the film had a cultural impact, and were people starting to recognize you from the film?
Yeah, I mean, I realized it pretty quickly because I was getting like messages near and far from people that I didn't even know, you know, went to movies, like someone I knew in college, you know, who worked at the radio station, and, you know, one of my uncles, and like, it was like people who aren't normally tapped into anything that I'm doing. Were like, oh my gosh, you know, we saw it. We're telling everyone to see it. It's a great movie. And it's funny because then as I started working more that year, people would say, oh, yeah, you were in Lady Bird. Like they would identify me from it, which was sort of new because I would get recognized, and I get recognized sometimes for being on the HBO shows, but a lot of times I get sort of a tilt of a head and like, wait, I know you, but they can't really place where. And this was like, you were in Lady Bird. So I feel like it was like an identifier that, you know, was like, oh, okay, people really watched that. They really did.
Based on how popular HBO Max is going to be next year to date this episode, people are going to discover you in a lot more HBO shows when they get their subscriptions to watch all these films.
I hope so. I think those shows are great, and I think they hold up too. So I hope people are still discovering them. Unfortunately,
we're talking sort of during a global pandemic, and the arts has been badly affected. How have things been for yourself during this kind of period of time? And for people that are listening to this, what do you hope people can do to sort of support the arts and talent like yourself during this quite challenging time?
It is really hard. I've done a couple of small jobs during this, and it's a little nerve-wracking. And I will say that everything I've been involved with has made me feel extremely taken care of and safe. And there's a lot of protocol in place, and that feels like it's being taken as seriously as it should be. But even with that, it really alters the experience on set, because I was on a commercial set maybe a week or two ago, and I remember being excited about, oh my gosh, I get to work, A, but B, one of the funnest things about a set is like you get to, you know, kind of yuck it up with new people, and oftentimes you run into crew members you've worked with before, and you know, you get to kind of talk, and as you're having coffee and standing around craft services, you get to connect. And that was non-existent because, you know, we were all in shields, and then you're really not encouraged to commune or to talk at all. And so I remember kind of coming home and thinking, oh, that wasn't the same experience. I was sort of isolated all day behind my shield. I didn't really feel like I had a connection. So so I can't wait until that can come back safely. But in the meantime, you know, people are still hungry for content, and we're burning through the content that we do have. And so the arts are important. It is important to keep making things. And I think, you know, maybe we're all having a little bit of Zoom fatigue, but I think, you know, as many things as you can support that maybe your friends or your community are doing, because there's so much great efforting going on in terms of online content. Last night, I was actually watching staged reading of a collection of plays because my mom, who is also a writer, won a one-act playwriting competition in her seniors category, which is kind of baller because my mom is 78 and she's a great writer and she's done a lot of different things over the years, but she'd never written a one-act play. And someone gave her this pamphlet about this competition and she decided, oh, I'll write something for this. And then she ended up winning, and she found out she won over the summer when I was actually with her, which was super exciting. And then last night was the presentation, and it was so cool because they found a way to have, with everyone in all these different locations, to, you know, have all the actors do these different pieces and simultaneously have the same background. So it looked like they were in certain places. And obviously it's not the same as live theater, but once you sort of adjust your mindset a little bit about the differences, what was most touching to me was the great effort that it's like the show must go on, you know, and people want to see art and people want to do art, and you know, and that's what we've got right now, you know. So I think as many things as you can support that are going to, you know, scratch that itch until we can scratch the real itch. I think, you know, just continue supporting and keeping the arts alive. And, you know, I can't wait until I can sit in a theater and like laugh with a bunch of people.
Yeah, you and me both. we pose this question to everyone we have on our show. What's your sort of opinion on the filmography of A24, and what are some of the highlights of for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, everything that I see that they do is really wonderful. I think that their mission is to create movies that push the envelope, and they're, you know, they are a great success, but I think that being a box office success is not their main priority. Their priority is like telling these stories that wouldn't necessarily get that platform. And that's really encouraging to see, because I think for a long time, artists, writers, creative people thought there was like two lanes. It was like, well, if I really tell the story that I want to tell, I have to make peace with the fact that it's probably not going to make much money and maybe not a lot of people will see it. And I might lose money, but it's going to be my baby and it's going to be my vision. Or I'm over here in this lane where I have to make a ton of compromises and make it really commercial and like follow this set of rules so that it is a monetary success and people do see it. And that like breaks your soul a teeny bit because, you know, you have to compromise certain things. And I feel like A24 embodies like the melding of those worlds, because people are telling stories and doing things that are unprecedented and you don't normally see, and also reaching a lot of people and being successful in that commercial realm.
What are some of your favorite films that they've been involved in?
Well, Moonlight is an A24, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that movie is like, that's the first one that really is like made me realize that they were onto something, that they were really willing to take big swings, and that everyone is ready. Everyone is very ready for those big swings.
My girlfriends won't forgive me if I don't ask you this question before you go.
I can't
Well,
wait.
probably one of the most influential 22 minutes of television on how they treat each other, respond and react to each other is the Galentine's Day episode of Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
What was it like to be involved in the episode? And did you envision that Galentine's would become a thing?
Well, no, I mean, it's so funny because, like I said, I had a role on Parks and Rec season 1. So Galentine's Day was season 2. But I played a receptionist on season 1 that I had this whole storyline with Amy Poehler, and it was this whole mix up about a fruit basket, and the whole thing got chopped because in season 1 I think they were doing so much improv on set that they probably each episode had enough for 2 episodes. So that was one of the experiences where I sat down and I was like, I'm not in this. Where'd I go? I mean, there was not one evidence of me. So I said to my my agents, like, well, because usually once you're on a show, that's it. You can't come back. And so I said, well, I didn't appear on the show, so you can still submit me for Parks and Rec. And so I auditioned again. The role was much bigger. My name was Shelley. I had like a interview to camera, and there was like a couple other scenes where you really got into the nitty gritty with the friends. And so again, I remember I was at, I think I was like on the campus of UCLA. I was doing some sort of nonprofit like work or something. And I remember my mom calling and going, oh, don't be mad. I'm worried you're going to be mad at me. And I said, what? She goes, I mean, you're not really in the episode. I mean, you're there, but like your lines are all cut. And I remember being like, what? Not again. You know, I was like, well, this happened again. And then I came home and I watched the episode and I was sort of like, yeah, she's right. My lines are gone, but I'm in there. But no, I had no idea because there's like a couple like screenshots and GIFs that every Valentine's Day like resurface and I'm in them. And it's just very funny because it was like one of those experiences that has all these twists and turns where I was like, I thought I was going to have this bigger part. That part was cut, but it ended up kind of being this iconic experience anyway. And of course, getting to spend the day with Amy Poehler, who I'd crossed, you know, I'd met her several times before, and Greta, who I was friends with socially. Like we were sitting around that table together and we were playing these games. We were talking about if we could pick celebrities to be our parents, like who we would pick. And it was like just it was like a Galentine's Day in and of itself. And I remember Rashida Jones was like, I would still pick Quincy Jones as my dad. And we were like, that's fair.
Who did you pick? Because obviously we don't know who your answer was. If that was in the final cut, who did you pick?
I know that I picked Catherine O'Hara as my mom.
Great choice.
And I think I picked like Pierce Brosnan as my
Fantastic
dad.
choice. Not bad.
Yeah, so we were having our own like multi-generational Galentine's Day kibitzing, because Amy Poehler said, you know, if I'm going to have this show, first of all, on this show, we say yes and we have fun. And we did.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Bayne, for joining us. If people want to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, what's kind of coming up, where's kind of the best sort of social media to follow you on, and is there anything we should keep our eyes out for in the near future?
So I'm on Instagram and Twitter as Bayne Gibby, just my name, no spaces or anything. So I'm very easy to find. And I am shooting something next week. I can't say what it is, but when it comes up on network TV, I will shout it out. And let's fingers crossed that this is, like in the new year, we have more opportunity to work and I'll have more things to promo for you, but you can find me there.
Well, thank you so much, Bayne. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend like an hour with you, chatting about Lady Bird, life, everything like that. It's been a
You
real
as
pleasure.
well.
Thank you.